2 years ago, my daughter Mackenzie went in for what we were told would be a simple microdiscectomy. It was supposed to take about an hour. They told us she would be walking the same day. It sounded almost routine. We trusted the hospital. We trusted her surgeon. We trusted the system. Her surgeon, Dr. Dingus, not his real name, greeted us with the calm confidence of someone who had done this countless times before. He assured us there was nothing to worry about. He said she would be fine. My wife squeezed my hand. Mackenzie smiled nervously from the hospital bed. She had been a cheerleader for years. Strong. Athletic. Always moving. She was terrified of slowing down. We told her it would be over before she knew it. When they wheeled her away, I believed those words. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. I began pacing the waiting room. My wife kept asking the receptionist for updates. Finally, after almost 4 hours, Dr. Dingus came out. He told us everything had gone perfectly. He said she would be waking up soon. We walked back to her recovery room, relieved. But when Mackenzie opened her eyes, something was wrong. She couldn't move her legs. She couldn't feel anything from the waist down. Her voice shook when she said, "Dad, I can't feel my legs." I looked at my wife. Her face went pale. We called for a nurse. Dingus came back in, looking almost annoyed. He told us it was nothing. He said sometimes patients take a little longer to regain feeling. He told us to give it 48 hours. Those words would haunt me later. Mackenzie's lower back was visibly swollen. Red. Angry. But Dingus barely looked at it. He insisted nothing went wrong. He claimed it was all in her head. He told us she had something called conversion disorder. A psychological condition. As if her brain had just decided to paralyze her legs. I could feel my blood pressure rising. But he was the surgeon. He was the one we were supposed to trust. We agreed to wait the 48 hours. 48 hours turned into a week. A week turned into 2. She still couldn't walk. Still couldn't feel her legs. The pain in her spine was constant. By the 3rd week, Dingus stopped even examining her. He sat behind his desk like we were wasting his time. He suggested psychiatric help. Mackenzie would wake up at night screaming. She said it felt like something sharp was stabbing her from the inside. Dingus called it phantom pain. He refused to order an MRI. The hospital staff started avoiding us. One nurse whispered that we should get a second opinion. But she refused to put anything in writing. We were desperate. We demanded an X-ray. Dingus only approved it if insurance wouldn't cover it. He said it wasn't medically necessary. We paid $3,000 out of pocket. He smugly waved the results in our faces. He said it was pristine surgical work. 2 more weeks passed. Still no improvement. My wife had enough. One morning she walked into the room and said, "We're leaving." I didn't argue. We loaded Mackenzie into the car. We drove 3 hours to St. Mary's in another state. The ER doctor took one look at her surgical site and ordered an MRI immediately. No lectures. No delays. Just action. When the MRI came back, the technician froze. The radiologist brought us into his office. He pointed at the screen. There it was. A 3-inch surgical screw pressing against Mackenzie's spinal cord. It had been there for 2 months. It had caused inflammation. It had caused infection. I felt sick. We sent the MRI to Dingus's hospital. Within an hour, we were called into a meeting with the chief medical officer, hospital lawyers, and Dingus himself. The CMO slid the MRI across the table. Dingus dismissed it. He claimed it was from another machine. He even suggested maybe something had been planted. But then the CMO pointed to the serial number. It matched their inventory. It matched the date of Mackenzie's surgery. It was signed off by Dingus himself. Dingus's face changed. His hands trembled. The CMO said, "You told these parents their daughter was crazy when you left a screw inside her spine." Dingus didn't say another word. He shoved his chair back. He left the room. He never came back. That night, St. Mary's told us the infection was spreading quickly. She needed surgery within 2 days to save what nerve function remained. We refused to let anyone from Dingus's hospital touch her again. The second surgery took 5 hours. The surgeon told us the damage was severe and permanent. She might regain some feeling, but she would never have full function again. When Mackenzie woke up, her first question was, "Will I dance again?" My wife couldn't answer. The next day, a Riverside nurse named Patricia came to us quietly. She handed us a USB drive. She said she had copied files before they could be deleted. It contained surgical notes, inventory logs, and emails where Dingus admitted to another surgeon that he suspected a retained foreign object right after Mackenzie's surgery. But he never told us. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just incompetence. It was a cover-up. We hired Marcus Thompson, a malpractice lawyer with a reputation for taking on impossible cases. He met us at St. Mary's just days after Mackenzie's second surgery. He was calm, methodical, and already angry on our behalf. He asked to see the USB drive Patricia had given us. For hours, he sat at the hospital cafeteria table scrolling through files. His expression hardened with each click. There were surgical notes showing discrepancies in time stamps, inventory logs with missing entries, and the email, the one where Dingus admitted he suspected a retained object right after the surgery but decided not to investigate. Marcus closed the laptop and said, "We have enough to start." That same week, Mackenzie began physical therapy at St. Mary's. Watching her try to move legs she couldn't feel was brutal. Years of muscle from cheerleading were already wasting away. She cried quietly during sessions but refused to quit. Marcus filed the lawsuit against Dingus and Riverside Hospital. Within 24 hours, local news stations were calling. They wanted interviews about the cheerleader paralyzed by a surgical mistake. We declined at first, wanting to protect Mackenzie's privacy. But the story was already spreading. That night, a Riverside administrator named Linda Reeves called my wife. Her voice was low and cautious. She said Dingus had been suspended. Then she hinted there were other cases we needed to know about. We met her the next day with Marcus present. She admitted 2 other patients had filed complaints in the past year. One had died. Then she slid a settlement offer across the table. Marcus told us not to take it. He said they were trying to buy our silence. Back at home, I found my wife sitting on Mackenzie's bed. Mackenzie was sobbing. She had wet herself without realizing it. The humiliation on her face broke something inside me. We both knew this was part of her new reality. 2 weeks later, I tried going back to work. In the middle of a meeting, I broke down. My boss quietly put me on family leave. Bills kept coming. The insurance company refused to cover the St. Mary's surgery. They said we hadn't gotten prior approval to transfer. Patricia called again, asking to meet in secret. She brought more evidence. Proof that Dingus had performed 3 surgeries the day he operated on Mackenzie. Hospital policy limited surgeons to 2. But he had been rushing to make a golf tournament. The anger in my chest was like fire. One night, Dingus showed up at our house with his wife. His hands shook as he admitted he'd been hiding tremors for months. His wife begged us to think about his reputation and his kids. I dragged him out of the house. Marcus began depositions. The anesthesiologist admitted the surgery ran much longer than normal. But he didn't question Dingus. The surgical nurse testified the instrument count was off afterward. But Dingus overruled her. Mackenzie's friends started visiting less and less. One told her it was too depressing to see her like this. Months passed. The medical board still hadn't acted. Then a journalist from the Tribune called. She said she had found 6 other questionable cases involving Dingus. 3 of them were fatal. When the article ran, Dingus's lawyer sent us a cease and desist letter. Mackenzie developed a pressure sore from sitting too long. The wound care nurse warned it could be dangerous. Then Patricia called again, crying. She had been fired for talking to the journalist. Other nurses wanted to speak out but were too scared. 3 months in, Mackenzie felt a tingle in her left toe during therapy. The neurologist told us not to get our hopes up. But it was the first sign of nerve activity in months. Our finances were collapsing. We had burned through savings. Maxed out credit cards. The insurance company began investigating whether they would cover any of her ongoing care. During his deposition, Dingus claimed Mackenzie's paralysis was from an anesthesia reaction, not the screw. He brought in an expert to back him up. Marcus warned us juries often believe confident doctors. The medical board finally held their review. My wife testified for 3 hours. She told them everything, the pain, the humiliation, the neglect. They still delayed making a decision. Then at midnight, I met 3 nurses in a Denny's parking lot. They handed me boxes of proof that Dingus had altered surgical notes in other cases. There was even a recording of him telling staff to fix paperwork. When I got home, I found Mackenzie unconscious on the bathroom floor. Empty pill bottles surrounded her. My wife was doing CPR. Paramedics revived her. She told the psychiatric doctor she'd rather die than spend life in a wheelchair. 4 months in, Riverside's insurer offered $2 million if we stayed silent forever. I wanted to take it. But my wife refused. She wouldn't let Dingus keep hurting people. That same week, Riverside hired private investigators to follow us. They photographed me at bars. They documented my wife's breakdowns. They even followed Mackenzie's friends. We were 11 months from trial. Mackenzie had already given up on therapy. Her depression was suffocating her. Then we heard Patricia had attempted suicide. She survived. But it showed us the real cost of telling the truth. By then, mold was growing in Mackenzie's bedroom from a roof leak we couldn't afford to fix. That's when Marcus discovered Dingus had quietly gotten a temporary license in another state. He was working at a walk-in clinic. We told the journalist. Within hours, it was national news. The clinic fired him. After the story went viral, Dingus showed up at our door again. He apologized for being a coward. He said he wanted to make things right. Mackenzie ignored him. My wife let him sleep on the couch but only if he agreed to family therapy. A few days later, at the grocery store, a woman approached my wife. Her son had been paralyzed by Dingus 2 years earlier. She had found an experimental nerve regeneration program in Germany. It cost $300,000. No insurance coverage. She gave us the contact information. Month 6, the medical board finally ruled. Dingus's license was suspended for 1 year with retraining afterward. A slap on the wrist. That same week, Riverside publicly cut ties with him. They called him an independent contractor. Mackenzie began online counseling with another paralyzed woman. For the first time in months, she talked about a future. Maybe college. Maybe graphic design. Marcus kept digging through thousands of hospital records. One night, he called us, his voice shaking. He had found emails showing Linda Reeves dismissed 3 previous complaints about Dingus. He brought in $4 million a year. Losing him would have meant shutting down departments. My wife started a blog called Paralyzed by Greed. She posted every document we had. It went viral. Riverside's lawyers sent threats. She posted those, too. Month 7 began with Mackenzie in the ICU. A catheter infection had turned into sepsis almost overnight. While she fought for her life, Marcus added Linda Reeves to the lawsuit for negligent supervision. We launched a GoFundMe for the German treatment. Donations trickled in at first. Then an anonymous donor gave $400,000 overnight. It felt like a miracle. A week later, police came to our door. Dingus had been arrested for practicing medicine while suspended. His mugshot was everywhere. A month later, a judge ruled Linda could be personally sued. She resigned the same day. In August, Mackenzie shocked us by asking to return to school for her senior year. The district installed ramps and assigned her a full-time aide. On her first day back, her old cheer squad performed their homecoming routine just for her. She cried through the whole thing. Trial prep was brutal. Marcus walked us through every possible question. During one prep session, Mackenzie had a panic attack so severe the court reporter stopped typing. She insisted on continuing. She said she wanted Dingus to face her in court. Then Patricia dropped a bombshell. The night before Mackenzie's surgery, she had seen Dingus drinking until 2 in the morning. His first operation the next day started at 7 a.m. Marcus added surgery while impaired to the charges. 2 days later, Riverside's lawyers offered $8 million for our silence. Mackenzie refused. She wanted a verdict. By month 11, she could transfer herself from bed to wheelchair. It wasn't much, but it was progress. The criminal trial for practicing without a license came first. The verdict was guilty. But the sentence was only probation and community service. 3 weeks later, jury selection began for our civil trial. Midway through, we flew to Germany for testing. The doctors placed electrodes on Mackenzie's legs. She gasped when she felt tingling in her left foot. It was the first time in over a year. Back in court, Marcus laid out the entire case. The defense painted us as greedy opportunists chasing a payout. My wife testified for 6 hours. Jurors cried as she described the pain and the humiliation. Then Dingus took the stand. At first, he admitted to a few drinks the night before surgery. Marcus produced a bar receipt showing half a bottle of whiskey. Dingus tried to claim he took extra care during the 4-hour operation. But surgical notes showed unnecessary repositioning and corrections. Wilson from Street. Mary's showed the MRI on a giant courtroom screen. He pointed directly at the screw pressing against Mackenzie's spinal cord. The defense's expert tried to claim the screw could have migrated later. But he couldn't explain how without massive trauma. Mackenzie testified from her hospital bed after a seizure mid-trial. She told the jury about the constant pain. The lost future. The humiliation of being told she was imagining it. She said all she wanted was for Dingus to admit he was wrong. He wouldn't look at her. Patricia took the stand and revealed proof Dingus had altered surgical times and records. Then came Linda, caught in emails telling staff to push more surgeries to Dingus and stop filing complaints. When Marcus held up the actual screw removed from Mackenzie's spine, Dingus's hands shook so badly he dropped it. It clanged loudly on the courtroom floor. I testified last. I told the jury how his arrogance had destroyed our family. For the first time, the defense didn't cross-examine. Marcus closed by asking for $30 million. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the courtroom was silent. They found Dingus guilty of malpractice. They found Riverside guilty of negligent supervision. Linda Reeves was personally liable. The award was $45 million, the largest malpractice verdict in Ohio history. Dingus whispered, "I'm sorry," in the hallway afterward. It was the first time Mackenzie had ever heard those words from him. 3 months later, the medical board permanently revoked his license. The district attorney filed criminal charges for falsifying medical records. His assets were frozen. Riverside's board fired every administrator who had protected him. They offered Patricia her job back, this time overseeing surgical safety. She accepted. We flew to Germany for 3 months of specialized therapy. The program was grueling, hours of electrical stimulation, pool therapy, and muscle reactivation every day. By the end, Mackenzie could stand with assistance for a few minutes. She could take slow steps with leg braces. The German doctors said that with relentless work, she might walk short distances someday. Month 16 brought her high school graduation. She crossed the stage using parallel bars. Each step was deliberate and painful. But she made it. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Dingus watched from his car outside. He wasn't allowed on school property. The appeals court upheld most of the verdict. They cut punitive damages from $20 million to $10 million. It was still enough to secure Mackenzie's lifetime care. Dingus filed for bankruptcy. He lost his home. We used the first payment to buy an accessible house. We installed therapy equipment and hired aides. Mackenzie started online college. She focused on patient advocacy and pre-law. She founded a nonprofit to help families hurt by medical mistakes. Her first grant went to Patricia's whistleblower support group. On our 20th wedding anniversary, my wife and I renewed our vows in our backyard. Mackenzie was my wife's maid of honor. She joked she didn't have to worry about tripping in heels. Dingus's criminal trial for falsifying records ended with a 2-year minimum security sentence. His lawyer read a letter admitting fault. Mackenzie chose not to attend. She watched online, saying she needed to hear the words but didn't want to see his face. 8 months into combined German stem cell treatment and U.S. therapy, Mackenzie took 10 shaky steps with a walker. A documentary crew captured it. Patricia cried when she saw the footage. Patricia later won her wrongful termination case. She used the settlement to fund nursing scholarships for advocates. The first one was named after Mackenzie. On the 2-year anniversary of the surgery, we returned to St. Mary's. We brought flowers for Dr. Smith. Mackenzie walked into her office using just a cane. She handed her a framed photo from her college orientation. Smith placed it on her desk immediately. That night, Mackenzie posted a video from her dorm room. She walked slowly from her bed to her desk. She said, "I'll never be 100%, but I refuse to let one surgeon's mistake decide my limits." She sat down. She opened her medical law textbook. She got back to work. For the first time in years, I didn't just see her pain. I saw her future.